It's podcast. It's Mike Lensing here with my co-host Jason Sunkle tonight. And what are you shaking your head about, man?
I just can't believe the Indiana Pacers are going to win the Eastern Conference, Mike.
It's my feeling exactly as I'm watching this. And in all honesty, like this game and this series, it just
It should
it
have been a
doesn't
sweep.
feel it should have been, and it doesn't feel like playoff basketball at all. Like neither one of these teams can guard the other team worth anything. I mean, both teams get basically whatever shots they want at any time. And I know part of that is I give Indiana a lot of credit because what they did to the Cavs and is the same thing that they're doing to the Knicks in that they just keep pushing the pace of the game and they force both the Cavs and in this case the Knicks to play at a faster speed than I think what they would want to play. But there's just no defense being played in this series. The fact that look, Halliburton was great tonight, and his stat line obviously is historic, but to have no turnovers, it just doesn't make any sense. I just watched these games here between New York and Indiana, and I just don't see playoff basketball. And I don't know how much of this is just sour grapes feeling like what a blown opportunity for the Cavs. Really, in all honesty, now 3 years in a row for this group of Cleveland Cavaliers
We're
where
going to this again, Mike. Why are we talking
I'm
about
just
this? We
I'm just
don't have to talk
telling you,
about the
man.
Cavs anymore,
Just
Mike.
telling you, I'm telling you, it just makes me angry. All my analysis of the series has to go through that
Jared
simple
Allen
lens. Look,
and DeAndre Hunter for LeBron James, Mike.
yeah, I saw that one. Yeah. I
Simmons,
don't know if
baby,
I
with Simmons.
yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think that's I don't know. Stranger things have happened,
Okay,
but
so wait,
I
Giannis for Mobley and Jared Allen and DeAndre Hunter for LeBron James. Let me throw that one at you, buddy.
so you're keeping the mini backcourt, but you're bringing in Giannis and LeBron. Eh, I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to think about both of those long and hard, but I think I would definitely do the Mobley for Giannis
Okay, let's
trade.
stay. Let's stay. Let's try to stay on the track
Yeah,
here, Mike.
let's stay focused here. Let's stay
Some of us
focused.
have to work tomorrow. We can't sit in the laps of luxury at home as their summer has started.
The
Mike.
series is over, right? The series is done,
Oh, it's
right?
over. It's over now. Now the question is how long does this series go? Is it over? I mean, there's some question marks. Karl Anthony Towns clearly is hurt has a hurt knee. Okay, Jalen Brunson has been good. Okay, Josh Hart has not been good. Okay, Mitchell Robinson is good for defense, but he's terrible for offense. If Karl Anthony Towns is out, Mike, the series is over now. It's done. It's dusted. Like this game 5 is going to be a blowout, and it's over. Um, I mean, I, I, I think I still think even if Karl Anthony Towns plays, it's over. And Indiana Pacers, I think both series are over by Friday. That's my prediction.
I think
I
you're probably right. I think you're
I
probably
think
right.
okay. I think okay. I think it might even both be over by Thursday. And then we're gonna have this dang thing again where we're gonna have a week of no basketball because the NBA has to schedule the finals for a specific date because of whatever reason, and we're gonna sit here for a week and have nothing to like no basketball games because they're idiotic and they have to wait a week. But like I know you have to try to plan things out, but it's once again this goes back to my NBA. The NBA has not done itself favors from scheduling. And I don't think I complained on the podcast last week, but the fact that a game 7 on a Sunday last week, the Nuggets was Nuggets Thunder game happened at 3:30 on a Sunday against a major in the PGA. Now I've not looked at the numbers, Mike. I've not looked at the numbers, but I guarantee you that the NBA game lost to the PGA. I'd be willing to bet ratings that the PGA smoked the NBA. Why the NBA decided there's no game. They had a full day. They could have made the game at 8:00, like they've done all these other games. Why they would do that? The NBA does not do itself favors with these schedules. I'm just telling you, it's stupid to have a week off between. And I know, once again, you need to make sure that all the series are over, but why set a date? If the games are over, listen, they talk about how long the season is and all this other nonsense. Just give them 3 days off. Start the game. If the games are over on Thursday, start the finals on Sunday. Why are we waiting until Thursday? It doesn't make sense to me, Mike. I just don't think the NBA and scheduling go hand in hand. And, maybe there's going to be a moot point, and these series are going to go 6 games, and then at that point it's going to be, Saturday, and then you're like, okay, well, Thursday's not. But
which one of these 2 series has a better chance of being extended to Game 6?
Well, that's why I said Friday. I think Oklahoma City, Minnesota, although it's in OKC, so maybe not. But I just think, if you look at it, OKC and Minnesota has been close in the first half for all 4 games, right? Agree?
Yeah.
Okay, and then Oklahoma City in the first 2 games took care of business in the second half of games 1 and 2. Game 3, Minnesota obviously controlled the game the whole game. All right, Game 4, I felt was an either or game, right? Until when was it an either or game? Until like the fourth quarter?
Never.
You don't think it was an either or game?
No, I felt like that entire game. Every single time Oklahoma City or every time Minnesota got close, it just felt like they just could not get over the hump. That was a game where, even though, look, I'm rooting for the Timberwolves, but I'm not rooting for the Timberwolves the way I'm rooting for the Cavs or the way I would root for my favorite team in any sport. But that felt like a game where there was no chance, it felt like, for Minnesota to come back, because it felt like every single time Oklahoma City had an answer. Let's talk more about that series in a second. Let's stay with Indiana and New York. So you're saying you think that Minnesota has a better chance?
I think Minnesota has a better chance. I mean, I'm basing it on the fact that I don't think Karl-Anthony Towns is playing, based on how he was walking and holding his leg, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say, like, it's going to be glorious to see the Knicks lose at the Garden. Come on, let's be honest. That'll be great. Come on.
Lester, here's a question for you. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that statement. But my daughter asked me as we're watching the game tonight, she goes, I really like Pascal Siakam. She's like, do you like him? I'm like, no, I don't really like him. She's like, who do you like on these teams? Which guy's your favorite player on these 2 teams? And I'm like, nobody. Not sure I really like anybody on any of these teams at this point. But here's my question for you regarding Karl-Anthony Towns. Has there ever been a player in the history of basketball who has looked one way when he has the ball in his hands and then looks completely like an uncoordinated individual who can't even run when he doesn't have the ball? Like, when he gets the ball and he puts the ball on the floor, he can move. Suddenly he's like in a stance with his knees bent. He looks athletic. And then as soon as the instant the ball leaves his hands, like he's running down the floor, he looks like a guy who would need running lessons, like how to pump his arms and how to lift up his knees and run. And then defensively, he just has no idea how to move his feet. He's never in a stance. It's shocking. I don't know which is more shocking. I don't know what's more shocking, when he has the ball and you're like, oh my God, he can actually do stuff, or you watch him do stuff on offense.
Yeah, and so I sent you
and he can't even walk. It's like,
I feel like I said, did I send you the video of Tyrese Halliburton as Steve Urkel? Did I send that video?
Yes.
So I was trying to think of, as you're describing that, I'm trying to think of what Karl-Anthony Towns, what famous character that played in a basketball movie is Karl-Anthony Towns. I think the closest thing I can think of is when Carlton played basketball in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It was really except Carlton was bad all the way around, but whenever he didn't have the ball and was running up and down the floor, he looked ridiculous, right? So that's what Karl Anthony Towns is. But when he gets the ball in his hand, he actually knows what he's doing. So that was that. But I love that video. The Tyrese Haliburton is literally Urkel. I thought that was good, and they spliced it together.
There was the play today where they did a slow motion replay where Towns drove and he did the reverse layup. I think Turner was guarding him, and they didn't call a foul, but he was kind of getting bumped and fouled. And he probably had 7 different facial expressions in what was in real time, probably like a 3-second clip. It changed his face. He's one of the most unlikable, just clownish figures in the NBA. And yet, I will say that I was a Karl Anthony Towns detractor when he was in Minnesota. When the trade happened, I said that the Knicks fans would rue the day that they put stock in Karl Anthony Towns.
The only reason they're playing still is because Karl Anthony Towns in Game 3.
Terrific in the fourth quarter. Put up 20, and just offensively, he shot the ball very well in this series, and he's been much more aggressive than he was in the Boston series. I think offensively, it's hard to have any quibbles with what he's done. He's also, I thought, tonight he got some tough rebounds in big moments, not just rebounds where he's snagging the ball off a missed free throw, where he was actually in traffic, battling and doing things. It's just when you watch him, it would be infuriating to be a fan of his team or to be his coach. Like I said, when you watch him move offensively when he has the ball, you're just like, for a guy his size, he's so agile and he moves so well and he changes direction and he can shoot the ball. He has every tool you could want. When he posts up, like he's strong in there. He can get to the basket. He looks good doing that stuff. And then, honestly, like the instant the ball is out of his hands, he just reverts to he's standing up straight. He can't really run. He doesn't get in a stance defensively. He would be infuriating to root for, and I'm sure he's infuriating the coach because he's such a plus on the one end and such a negative on the defensive end of the floor. He doesn't move his feet. He can't get to where he needs to go. He's constantly lurching out of position. Now he's cut down a little bit this year.
I want you to know, Mike, he's the only player in this for the Knicks that was on the starters that was positive today. He's +3.
Yep.
Today, despite all those things you just said about him.
Look, and he's not the reason they're losing. He's clearly not there. Without him offensively, if he's in any way compromised for Game 5, I just don't know how this Knicks team, how do they score?
Does the corpse of PJ Tucker get dusted off in this next game?
No, I don't think so. I don't think we have to worry about PJ Tucker getting any.
Well, here are the other players that Tibbs has to play. We got PJ Tucker. We got Cam Payne. We saw what that was like. We're not going to get that again. We got Tyler Kolek. We got Pacomi Datiate. I don't even know who that guy is. And we've got Ariel Hukporti. That sounds like a very nice name, Hukporti.
Hey, they got Landry Shamet, got some big minutes, and DeLon Wright got to play a little
bit. Landry Shamet played a huge role in Game 3.
He did. I'm just saying, those guys, for the Boston series, those guys didn't see really any time. And Tibbs is grasping for straws. I think what we talked about going into the series has definitely been a factor in that the Pacers have made Jalen Brunson have to work to bring the ball up the floor. And consequently, the Knicks have put the ball in other guys' hands, just like the Cavs tried to do to bring the ball up the court to try to save some miles and wear and tear on Brunson. And it's definitely, I think, their full court pressure and just the amount of defensive effort they're putting into guarding Brunson full court has definitely had an effect. It's had an effect maybe wearing Brunson down to some degree, but also it's had an effect just in terms of
pace.
The Knicks having to put the ball in somebody else's hands, right? Which doesn't. Then the ball's got to get back to Brunson so he can initiate the offense, and it eats up seconds on the shot clock, which makes your offense feel a little bit more pressure. And I just think that constant press on Brunson and just picking him up all over the floor and bumping him and all the things. You saw him get into it with Matherin a little bit again tonight. I just think that over the course of a series, that wears on you. Just the way same way it wore on Donovan Mitchell, it's definitely wearing on Brunson. And now Brunson's other problem this series is he's picked up a lot of fouls, and so he's had to sit occasionally. Obviously, in the fourth quarter of Game 3, when Towns went crazy, there was some talk that maybe that didn't happen if Brunson was on the floor because the Knicks were able to have some better defensive players on the court rather than having Brunson out there, who's another weak link along with Towns. It's hard to hide two guys, especially two guys who are one's your point guard and the other guy's your center. Those are two tough positions to be able to have to constantly scramble to make up for. As good as the other three guys on the Knicks may be on defense, it's still difficult for them to be able to cover for those two guys. There was just in this game, it just felt like again the defense from both teams. It felt like teams, the Knicks, the Pacers, either team could get whatever shot they wanted at any point during the game. I never felt like you're like, okay, this team's really digging in and making it tough for the other team to score. It's just, and I don't know if that's just because, again, the Pacers are doing such a good job offensively of pushing the pace that they're getting out before the Knicks can set up their defense. And look, Indiana's never been a great defensive team. They were better over the second half of the season, and they've been fairly good in the playoffs. But Indiana, let's face it, they're winning with offense and with pace. And the Knicks haven't been able to slow them down. It would have been interesting if you would have gone back to the Knicks team from a year ago or 2 years ago that was more built around defense as opposed to this team, which is more built around offense, to see what that prior version of the Knicks team could have done. If you think back to last year's series where all the Knicks were hurt and the Pacers ended up winning Game 7 at Madison Square Garden, but the Knicks were kind of like a mash unit at that point. I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of this series other than the fact that I think Indiana's pace has just made it very difficult for New York to be able to defend them. And just like in the Cavs series, if you look up and down the lineup for the Pacers, just about every guy is playing at or above what you would expect their production to be. The one guy who hasn't been as good in this series as he was in the last series against the Cavs has been Nembhard. He's been okay. Tonight he was 1 for 9. He's been fine, but he hasn't been nearly as good as he was against the Cavs. But everybody else, Halliburton's been good. Turner's been good. Neesmith obviously was good tonight, but he also had the huge fourth quarter in what was that game 2, right? Game 2 to be able to win that game. And then Siakam tonight he had 30. He's been fantastic, much better than I would have ever guessed. That I think his ceiling this series has been higher than I would have guessed that Siakam could have been able to get to. He was tremendous, and I thought he hit the biggest shot of the game. It was a 3 from the right wing. The Knicks had cut it to I think either 4 or 6 with about 4 minutes to go, maybe 5, and Siakam got a pass and caught it on the right wing and drilled the 3 and put it back up, I believe, to 7. And that was a huge, huge shot. It seemed like when they needed baskets, it was almost always tonight, at least, it was almost always Siakam or Halliburton that was able to get the basket that they really needed. And like I said, it just feels like the Knicks, the amount of resistance that they're putting up defensively just leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how much of that to attribute to how good Indiana's offense has been versus I just don't think the Knicks defense has been very difficult for the Pacers to penetrate.
Yeah, Mike, I'm going to go back to saying, I don't want to listen to Cavs. I think the Cavs would have dusted the Knicks. I think it would have been the same as what Indiana's doing. I honestly don't. I think this is the Knicks have been not very. I mean, they had a Carl. They're Carl Anthony Towns fourth quarter away from not even having another game, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I just don't think that they haven't been good defensively, or at least good enough. I think that if you're them, right, you have to get Halliburton off the ball. And whether that's you got to run doubles at him and just make him give it up. And the problem is that Indiana's other guys have played really well. And because they're pushing the pace, a lot of times the Knicks are getting caught where they're cross matched. And so all of a sudden you have a mismatch. Their defense is scrambling. And then Indiana's so good moving the ball, making that extra pass. And let's face it, guys in this playoff run have been shooting the ball really well. And when you shoot the ball really well, it makes it difficult for the other team to be able to have some differences in their defensive schemes, right? Because no matter what you do, if the ball finds a second, third, fourth option and those guys are knocking down threes or they're driving and taking the ball to the basket. I mean, Indiana shot 51% as a team tonight. They shot 40% from three and 84% from the line. So if you're going to go 50, 40, 84 as a team and put up 130 points, it's pretty difficult for your team to lose if you're going to put up those kinds of numbers. And Indiana has consistently throughout these playoffs shot the ball extremely well as a team. And in the games that they haven't, they've lost. I think I read or heard this morning that when they score 114 or more, they were 9-0, I think. And when they scored under 114, those are the games that they lost. So you're talking 114 is not like, it's not like you have to hold them to 98 points in order to beat them. You got to hold them under 114. And nobody's really been able to do it consistently. Milwaukee couldn't do it. The Cavs couldn't do it. And the Knicks certainly can't do it. And I don't want to look ahead too much, but I think when you start looking at in Indiana potentially against OKC as an NBA Finals, you're looking at Indiana's pace and the fact that Halliburton rarely turns the ball over against a team, Oklahoma City, that's kind of built on forcing turnovers. So it's kind of the opposite. Minnesota has been a team that all through the season has been a high turnover team. And so you're taking their weakness and going against Oklahoma City's strength. And that's kind of how it's played out. Minnesota, we said before the series, they had to win the turnover battle, and they really haven't. And so you look at potentially Indiana against Oklahoma City in the next round, and that'll be a super interesting contrast between Indiana's ability to protect the ball and Oklahoma City's desire to turn teams over and get out and run and score easy baskets. Because I still think Oklahoma City's half-court offense, it can get a little clogged toilety at times. But
yeah, for sure.
So,
all right. So I think Indiana's going to win the series Thursday. I'm saying it now. What do you think?
I feel like you're right. I feel like
Thank you.
Tonight was their chance. They were in the game. They had opportunities. They just couldn't get stops. I mean, it comes down to at some point you have to make it difficult for the other teams to score. And Indiana was either getting open threes or they were getting drives to the basket or they were getting to the foul line. And as a result of that, the Knicks just couldn't, they just couldn't stop them. And if you can't play defense, you're not gonna beat Indiana. You got to slow them down and change make them play at a slower pace. If you let them play at that kind of fast pace, it just doesn't work.
All right, so moving to the other series, Mike, Oklahoma City, Minnesota. I'm kind of in the same spot. Like Minnesota's game 3 was great. Don't get me wrong, but I think they, I felt they were more in the game for game 4. You did not feel like they were in the game for like Anthony Edwards.
They were in the game, but I never for a second felt like Oklahoma City wasn't going to win that game.
Okay. That's fair. I just and listen, here's the bottom line. Oklahoma City is clearly the better team. Okay. It's not even, to me, it's not even a question, right? It's not a question. I think Oklahoma City is the better team. And I think Oklahoma City is going to win the series. I think they probably win it tomorrow. There's a chance they push it back to Minnesota, but I have a feeling they're just going to come out. Listen, I feel like Oklahoma City is the champions at this point. But I mean, you're talking we're going to have Oklahoma City versus Indiana for the NBA championship. I can't believe it. And I guess if Cleveland would have made it, people would have been saying the same thing, right? Cleveland versus Oklahoma City for the NBA championship. At least
You would have had the two teams with the highest win totals over the course of the regular season. So yeah,
yeah,
obviously two small
but
market teams, but
Indiana's had the third best record since what? The All Star break was that what they said was the third best record since the All Star break, or maybe
but people don't really look at. I mean, you can take whatever arbitrary date you want and pick out, hey, they've been the best team since then. The fact of the matter is that over the course of the regular season, the Thunder and the Cavs were the two best and most consistent teams. And so, yeah, people would have been, ooh, that's a weird finals, but it wasn't weird within the context of the regular season. Nobody, let's put it this way. I think if you'd have gone back before the beginning of the playoffs and you'd have looked at what people thought was going to happen, I think that 98% of people who had any interest in watching the NBA would have told you that the NBA champion was going to come from one of Oklahoma City, Boston, and Cleveland. And maybe that's still going to be the case, and Oklahoma City is just going to finish off Minnesota and then run through Indiana, which is at this point, I would say, probably the most likely outcome. But the fact that Boston and the Cavs did not even make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, there was nobody nationally, locally, anywhere predicting that Indiana was going to be the Eastern Conference representative in the NBA Finals. If you go back and look at any sports media outlet, any group of people who are NBA prognosticators, NBA commentators, there was nobody who was picking anyone besides Boston or Cleveland to come out of the East. I don't care. Retrospectively, you can look at it and say Indiana was underrated, or people thought that Indiana could give one of those two teams a run for their money. Sure, maybe, but there was nobody picking the Indiana Pacers to make it to the NBA Finals. Oklahoma City, on the other hand, obviously, almost everyone felt like the only thing that could have held them back was their lack of experience and youth, and they've overcome that to some degree. There's still been some moments, but they have been able to, when they've run into those rough patches, they found ways to get around that, and Shea being one of the biggest reasons that's helped them get over the hump.
yeah. So, like, do you think it's over tomorrow, Mike? Is it done?
Yeah, I think it's over because it's in Oklahoma City. I think if it was in Minnesota, I would give Minnesota at least a chance. I think that when you look at what's difficult here is when you're down 2-1 and you lose that fourth game to go down 3-1, and they flashed up a stat at the end of the Pacers next game tonight that teams that go up 3-1 win like 86% of the series. It's like 285 and 13 or something like that. So when you lose that game 4 to go down 3-1, psychologically that's just a huge blow. I think it takes a really mentally tough group to come back and fight through and battle, say, hey, we're going to win that next game. I think that's why when I look at these two series, if you're Minnesota and you're looking at it, you say, we got to win 3 in a row, two on the other team's home court against a team that won 68 games and has the league MVP. That seems like a pretty tall task, not just physically to do that on the court, but also just psychologically to get yourself to believe that that's possible. And so if you don't necessarily 100% believe it's possible, then everything better go right for you in game 5. Because if anything starts to go wrong, party has got to say, man, I don't think we can do it anyway. Not that you're physically quitting or thinking of that in your conscious mind, but the idea that you're going to come back and win 3 in a row against Oklahoma City with 2 of those games on the road seems pretty far fetched. That's why if I was going to pick one of these two series to go longer, I would pick the Knicks series only because New York's going to be at home for game 5. And if you win a home game, Now you go back and you say, hey, we only got to win one game in their building, which we've already won one. It's kind of the same situation that the Cavs were in, where you're like, man, if they could just win game 5, now there's pressure on the home team when they go home to win game 6, so they don't have to come back for a game 7. So if I was going to pick which of these two series I thought was going to go further, I would pick the Knicks. But I don't think I won't be surprised if Indiana closes that one out in 5, like we talked about earlier. This Minnesota series, for them to win on the road in Oklahoma City down 3-1 with the prospect of still having to win 2 more games if they do somehow pull out game 5, that's a tough mountain to climb, both physically and psychologically. And then you have coming off this game 4 where you have Randall and Anthony Edwards who went 6 for 20 from the floor and 1 of 10 from 3. And they got some huge games from McDaniels with 22, Edwards with 16. I'm sorry, DiVincenzo with 21, and Alexander Walker with 23. When you have those kinds of performances from your secondary guys, like you need your stars to come through, and those two guys just didn't come through in a big way, at least scoring wise. I thought Edwards had some moments as a passer where he drew the defense, and sometimes he didn't always get the assist, but sometimes it was like the play that kind of started the dominoes falling by him penetrating the defense and then kicking it out. Maybe it was one more pass to get that at open 3. So I don't think Edwards was as bad as what I heard some people talking about, but he's got to be better. And if you're talking about somebody who's a top 5, top 10 player in the league, you got to come up with a better performance than that in a must-win situation for your team at home, especially when you get such huge contributions from your role guys. They just needed more from Edwards and Randall. Playoff Randall from his time in New York kind of resurfaced. It's the second time in this series where he's kind of no-showed in a big moment.
Yeah. I think it's over tomorrow. Now you've made me convinced. Oklahoma City tomorrow. So we're gonna have Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma City, Indiana is gonna be locked in on Thursday, and we can complain about the schedule. Having to wait a week for the first NBA Finals game.
Yeah.
But
can we talk quickly about how good Shea has been in this series? He had 40 last
being
night.
a foul merchant.
I mean, certainly there's some of that, but at the same
time, I mean, Mike, I want to go back 2 years. You are 4 years, and you complaining about how Harden would get foul calls. I think it's the same.
I don't feel like it's quite as egregious. Look, I've said it many times.
Well, it is egregious because this is in a high leverage situation. Harden never did it in a high leverage situation.
I guess that's true. Look, my thing is that I've always maintained that being able to draw fouls is a skill. Not every player has the ability to maneuver their body, put themselves in position, have the wherewithal to be able to get off a shot and be able to try to draw contact. It's a skill. It's a skill when I think about playground pickup basketball, guys that could draw fouls, guys that know how to use their body. It's a skill. And nobody loves it as a fan unless it's your guy that is on your team and he's constantly parading to the line. And look, is Shea guilty of that to some degree? I would say yes. But by the same token, when you look at what that guy is able to do in terms of just generating space and being such a good shooter from the mid range, it's almost like he can pretty much get any shot that he wants by driving in, stop, pull back, shoot the little step back. And it's almost to the point where, again, I've said this in relation to Jordan or Kobe, thinking of them in their kind of with their post up where they're fading away and your defense is kind of irrelevant. Either he's going to make the shot or he's not. And I feel like Shea is almost getting to that point with his mid-range step back jumper where there's not really much you're going to be able to do with it because he's driving you back and he's so good at stepping back and just making that shot, and he creates so much space with his deceleration that the defense that's being played on him is almost irrelevant. It's like, is he going to make the shot or is he going to miss the shot? And I mean, it's crazy. Like for this series, he's averaging 35 a game. He's shooting 51% from the floor, 55% from three, and 84% from the line with 7 rebounds and 7 assists. He's been every bit the NBA's MVP in
Yeah.
this
Oh,
series.
can I jump in on that real quick?
Sure.
What's your takeaway from Mike Malone? Like basically
In terms of,
of the like a month and a half ago, he was talking about how Jokic was clearly should be considered the
he still
MVP. And
he still said at some point he did say he would have voted for Jokic. I don't know when. I mean, clearly he's been singing Shea's praises. And look, I, I would have voted for Jokic. Shea has been tremendous in this series. He's been phenomenal throughout the entire playoffs. He's had 1 or 2 games where maybe he hasn't been at the highest of possible levels, but you look at what you want from an MVP. Anytime there's a run, anytime there's a play that's necessary to be made, anytime they need a big basket, he's in the middle of however that score comes to be, whether he's scoring himself or whether he's drawing defenders and then making the pass. He had a couple of really nice passes last night to Jalen Williams and to Chet, who both, by the way, guys that we've been questioning, that I think national media has been questioning whether or not those two guys are good enough or ready to be the second and third options. Last night, they were both tremendous in that game. I thought Chet, especially, hit some huge, huge threes and looked aggressive in doing it. And Jalen Williams obviously put in 34 and was 6 of 9 from three. Felt like he hit every time they needed a big basket to go in. And he was the one taking the shot. He was like the anti Dean Wade. I felt like it was going to go in every single time. And if those two guys are going to play anywhere near the level that they played at in game 4, then, I mean, clearly they're going to finish out Minnesota, but it's going to be lights out for Indiana as well. Looking ahead to that potential Indiana Oklahoma City finals, like I said, it's going to be super interesting to see Oklahoma City's defense against Indiana's offense. And that being said, we've praised Oklahoma City's defense, and yet they won that game for 128, 126. So it's not like they shut down Minnesota. You could say they took away Minnesota's 2 best players, but as a team, Minnesota still shot 51% from the floor and
yeah,
44% from three, and they lost. I mean, if they get even an average performance from Randall or Anthony Edwards in terms of scoring, they probably win that game. And if you're a Minnesota fan or you're Chris Finch, you got to be kicking yourself knowing that you were right there in that game. Although, like I said, I just felt like they couldn't get it. There was a bunch of moments where it seemed like Minnesota had kind of grabbed the momentum, and yet Oklahoma City answered it every single time. It felt like with like a 5-0 run or a 7-0 run, and it wasn't like they just Minnesota made a big play. Like there was a Gobert dunk that I think tied it at maybe 66, and then there was a timeout. And coming out of the timeout, I think Oklahoma City scored at least the next 7. They might have scored the next 9. And then there was 1 or 2 other instances like that where Minnesota got it tied or got within 1 or maybe even got up 1. And then Oklahoma City, it wasn't like they went on they just scored on the next possession and then it kind of went back and forth. It was like, boom, they just immediately went on a 7-0 or 9-0 run to take what was a tie game or up 1 situation. All of a sudden it's back to 8 or 9 points. And it just never really felt like, as I'm watching that game, I never felt confident that Minnesota was going to get completely over the hump. It felt like Oklahoma City, even though they got pushed and pushed and pushed, it just never felt like they were going to break. And like I said, even though rooting for the Timberwolves is not the same as rooting for the Cavs, it felt like one of those games where the team that you're rooting for, no matter how hard they try, it just felt like they were never going to be able to get over the hump because Oklahoma City always had an answer in terms of a clutch basket, a good possession, a 5-0 run, a 7-0 run, a couple of defensive
Yeah.
stops. And it just never felt like Minnesota was going to be able to get over the hump. And they turned the ball over too much, and they got to get you had, we said at the beginning, you had to win the possession game, and Oklahoma City took 95 shots in that game and Minnesota took 84. That's not the formula for Minnesota to win. They have to get more shot attempts than Oklahoma City, whether that's through limiting their turnovers, dominating the offensive boards, whatever it may be. And they just, in game 4, they weren't able to do it. In game 3, obviously they were. And when your two biggest and best offensive players don't come through, it's going to be really tough to win a game. And they almost did. I mean, the role players almost got them over the hump, but Oklahoma City Stars ended up besting Minnesota's role players, as good as they were.
Yeah. Like I said, it'll be interesting to watch what happens. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few days. And then I don't know. We'll just have to wait it out, I guess.
Well, what's the mental makeup of these two teams, right? Which team is either one of these teams, Minnesota or New York, going to be mentally tough enough to put up a fight, win a game, make it a close game? I could see both these games being blowouts. I could see Oklahoma City just blowing the doors off Minnesota at home to get to their first NBA Finals, or to get to their second NBA Final since they've been in Oklahoma City. Got there once with the Durant, Westbrook, Harden group in, what was that, 2013? 2013, I believe, the Heat's first championship, or was that 2012? I think it was 2013. Anyway, and then Indiana, who's been in the NBA Finals one time. It's hard to see them blowing out the Knicks in New York, but it's also, I don't know, it's going to take a lot for New York to come back from losing this game today, and just kind of, they have to be kicking themselves over losing game 1 at the Garden on the Halliburton shot. There's just a million different things that you can look at in these series, that whether it's a play, a game, a situation, that if one or two things go differently, then suddenly you can look at an entire series, an entire team in a different way. So I'll be curious to see what the mental fortitude looks like for Minnesota and New York, and whether or not Oklahoma City and Indiana can sort of stomp on the collective throats of those other two teams and be ready to move on to the finals. I expect Oklahoma City to win their game pretty easily. And then I think the Knicks in the Garden will put up a good fight. I won't be that surprised, honestly, if they win that game. I'll still pick the Pacers, but I would not be surprised if New York at home comes through with a big effort. And
if Towns doesn't play, though, right, they're done.
If Towns doesn't play, I don't know how they score enough to be able to hang with Indiana. And look, Indiana's been great. I don't trust them as much as I trust Oklahoma City to come through with a good game, especially because Indiana, again, is on the road. So, and they'll know they have that home game in their back pocket. But again, they were in that same situation against the Cavs, and they got down 20 in the first half to Cleveland, and boom, they kept fighting, and worked their way all the way back, and ended up winning game 5 on the road. So who knows? They proved their toughness in that particular instance, and maybe they'll do it again. But I expect the Pacers next game to be close. I'll pick Indiana, and then I expect Oklahoma City to take care of business and give the Timberwolves kind of a beatdown. So I think we're looking at Oklahoma City, Indiana, which, as you said, not a finals that anybody necessarily expected, but I think could be an interesting and entertaining finals. There's certainly some compare and contrast in that series that should be interesting when you think about the offense versus the defense of kind of going both ways. And I think Shea and Halliburton, an interesting matchup of the two best players on each team, two guys that have differing abilities, but certainly are both interesting players to watch.
Yep, for sure. Anything else, Mike?
I think that's it. We covered our 2 game 4s and looked ahead to game 5. So we will, the next time we're back, we'll probably be wrapping up these two series and we will be doing our NBA Finals preview, most likely Oklahoma City against Indiana. Go back 6 weeks. And if we'd have been saying that, we'd have both been extremely angry and frustrated and not understanding what exactly happened. And I think we're still sort of in that same position. But the Pacers have been really good, and the speed at which they play overwhelm the Cavs. It's overwhelming the Knicks. And it remains to be seen whether they'll be able to do that same thing with the Oklahoma City Thunder in the NBA
Yep.
Finals. So we shall see. All right. Thanks to everybody for listening tonight. Really appreciate it. Thanks for checking us out if you did on our live YouTube. And we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.